the PMP Industry Insider Podcast. I'm Brett, the editor, and it's time for another edition of Insider's Rewind. We're looking back to the month of May and picking a good, impactful section to feature again. Episodes 224 through 228 took place last month, and as always, packed with great insights to help you grow your pest and lawn business. So the PMP Industry Insider Podcast takes a look at what is changing in the pest and lawn industry, and each week the show is presented by our friends at Comarch. The busy season, it's in full swing, and if you want to come out of the season stronger, there's one name you need to know. Comarch. From digital strategy to conversion-driven websites, Comarch helps pest and green businesses scale smarter, and right now they're offering the first month free for our podcast listeners. You can visit comarch.com/PMP-industry-insiders to claim that offer today. We'll put that information in the show notes below. And if it's pest industry-specific insurance you're after, PestSure provides the insurance that you need. They provide insurance products tailor-made for the pest and lawn industry. Visit them online at PestSure.com. And new for 2025 is the industry leader in designing and implementing unparalleled voice solutions. That's Voice for Pest, and they're helping PCOs of any size across the country. Visit them online at voiceforpest.com/podcast. Also, information on peer groups is available. You can learn more about it by visiting pmpindustryinsider.com/peer groups. David Billingsley is the facilitator, and a preview of how they work is available. Go back to episode 136, give that a listen. All the information is available there. Thursdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, new episodes of the show are released, and May was one of those special months here in 2025 where we had 5 Thursdays, so quite a bit to get to today. We'll take a look back at episodes that include a field report with Raymond Kidwell from Voice for Pest, Dan and Donnie's tips on prepping for a recession. A cybersecurity episode happened last month. We'll also talk Quality Pro and the perfect size for a pest control branch. Big or small, you be the judge. So a lot to get to today, but we're starting with episode 224. This was with Voice for Pest Director of Business Development, Raymond Kidwell. They discuss implementation of Voice for Pest in your business. Call listening, call analysis. There's so much more packed into this episode. I wanted to bring back up Donnie's section, what he noticed from using Voice for Pest at Triangle, the red flags that it can pick up. The AI in Voice for Pest is able to raise red flags when calls take a turn. So here we go.
A good one that we were actually looking at this morning would be like customer flags, meaning that, you know, the AI will actually look at interactions with customers and say, hey, look, this person is at high risk for canceling. And so it allows our staff to get in front of these customers and make phone calls or texts or emails to follow up to make sure that, you know, it can legitimately look at these calls and look at what has come in and say, look, you know, and flag those customers for us. And we were actually looking at a report this morning, and I would love to tell you that I'm happy to say, but it was 40 some customers. And so, you know, this morning we were like, hey, we're going to reach out to these customers and we're going to make sure that we obviously we don't want to cancel, but it's nice that there's kind of I don't want to call it co-pilot because that's a Microsoft term, but it is kind of that, right? There's this all encompassing software that's kind of sitting on top of all the action and, you know, providing insights that are a lot faster than we could ever do it on our own. And so that's one reason.
How do you know that you're at risk for losing the customer? Is it?
It's in the algorithm. It's like in what they're saying, like, you know, what the sentiment is of the call. What, you know, I'm sure there's some keywords. There's probably an algorithm in there. But look, if you and I were talking to someone, I mean, I don't know. I ran a phone when we first started. I'm probably sure that you did as well, Dan, when you had your pest control company back in the Stone Ages. But nonetheless, you know, you can tell, right? Customer calls in, they're super ticked off, and it's like, hey, you know, we're going to make this right. We're going to get right. And so I don't know the specific algorithm as to how it matches the flag. All I know is that it was pretty good. I mean, when we're looking at the notes, as to why it flagged that account. So that's, okay, so first of all, that's just one piece.
If you click on the podcast tab at pmpindustryinsider.com, you're able to scroll back and listen to any episode that you may have missed. You can also get information on peer groups over there. But back there, great episode 224, Dan, Donnie, and Voice for Pest's Raymond Kidwell. We're moving on to episode 225. It's called, Are You Recession Ready? Dan and Donnie on this episode discussing Very important topics, including the current economic indicators. There's way more in here. It's a great 41 minutes. But this section here is about the main stuff. What do you do in a recession?
What to do. And Dan, I'm going to let you start us off on this part because, we've talked about what a recession is. We've talked about the big factors and what that might turn into. Now let's talk about what do you do as a business to kind of get ready for what may come if you believe that it is going to happen?
So there's only two things you can do. You can increase revenue or decrease, your costs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to say that I'm crazy, but
You're crazy. There you go.
first thing on increasing revenue, I'm raising prices.
Oh.
Raising prices because
Uh-huh.
the elasticity of our service is not that, you're going to be able to make more money on the increase of the price than you're going to lose customers, right? So now you're going to be doing less work for more money, which has that increases your profit, right? So that's one thing that you could do. Or you could decrease costs by, just really hunkering down, optimize your routing, make sure that your vehicles are all maintained, outsource your bookkeeping, right sizing your staff. But here's one that we've been
I don't know
going
for our
on.
listeners. Did you catch that, by the way? Anyway,
That
yeah,
was a
yeah.
But how about AI customer communications to replace all the people in the office? Not all of them, but some of them.
Well,
Right?
hang on. You said something. I actually want to come back to this because I don't know that I 100% disagree with you. There's a really popular
Outsourcing your
story.
bookkeeping?
No,
Oh,
that's not what I'm
okay.
talking about. So you're talking about increasing your prices during a recession. I'm going to try to dig this article out. And listen, I'm doing this by memory. So if I mess something up, you guys can send me my hate mail and tell me where I was wrong. But so I'm doing this by memory. But I remember reading an article when we went into a recession. And remember Panera bucked the system. And while everyone else was cutting their prices, Panera actually increased their prices. And they grew market share when they did that during a recession, which was just kind of crazy. I remember reading that article and I was kind of floored. And so I guess my point is that I always think you're crazy. And I always think that, there's many items that you and I disagree on. But I don't know that I fully disagree with you on that one. This is one of those things where you
Does that mean that you
intellectually.
agree or that you don't agree? I
It
don't
means
fully disagree.
I
It's like a
never fully
negative of
agree.
a negative.
Yes, I don't. Yes, that's exactly what that means. But
Okay.
so if you're listening to this, I will tell you, I'm absolutely thinking the same thing at Triangle. I'm thinking of going the opposite way, not because Dan said it or that Panera did it, but I 100% believe that. Well, what Dan said was correct. If you increase prices, you're going to get a much bigger pop than if you try to cut prices and continue to lose customers. And so, if that makes sense, hopefully that makes sense to our listeners. I do think that's a very good point, and I think it's one that we need to listen to. It's just one of those things when it's like, you're going bungee jumping, and it's time for, you to jump off a jump off a cliff. It's like,
Right. And you don't
is
know
this
how
thing going to
long
work?
bungee
Yeah,
is.
you're like, is this thing
Am
going
I
to
going to
work?
go flat or am I going to spring back up?
Episode 225 from May 8th, titled Are You Recession Ready? Other topics there include focusing on your company culture during the slow times and the importance of focusing on your core business. Full show notes are available in the description of each episode over at pmpindustryinsider.com. Next up is episode 226 from May 15th, Cybersecurity in Pest and Lawn, real threats, real solutions, and strategies to protect your company from attacks. They can help avoid costly consequences, and the story that we have coming up cost this guy a lot. Luckily, he had insurance. So this features real stories of pure turmoil when it comes to cyber attacks. They can snag your bank info, they can get your customer credit card information, or similar to this story, skate right under the radar and hijack your email address. So I wanted to bring this part up again because it's a story that is about this guy. He lost a ton before he caught on. It's a great section though, because it can happen to any business, big or small. Lots of lessons here.
How do you want me to pay? You want me to give you a check? You want me to, you want me to send you, electronic payment, whatever? He's like, yeah, just he's like, just get me on PayPal, but do it, like just pay me on PayPal. And I'm like, sweet. So we're emailing back and forth, and he's like, yeah, pay me on PayPal. Here's where you go. We pay the guy on PayPal. And so we leave on vacation. And I think I've told this story before. And if I'm acting like
No,
crazy,
I haven't heard it. Go ahead.
yeah, so this is crazy. So we pay him. I paid him that night because we're leaving on vacation. And so we leave. I think we're going to the beach or something like that. It's like 4 days later, and he calls me. He's like, "Hey, Donnie, you gonna pay me?" And I'm like, "No, I didn't say that." I'm like, "What are you talking about, dude? I paid you already." He goes, "We haven't seen anything on PayPal." And I'm like, I can send you the receipt that I have paid you on PayPal." And lo and behold, I go back on PayPal and I had paid it, and I forwarded him the account. And he's like, "That's not my account." And I said, "Well, I've got an email from you saying that this is where you wanted payment sent." And Dan, it was the craziest thing.
Wasn't his email.
Turns out what had happened is that hackers had intercepted, they had figured out the password to his email, and they set up rules. And so there's a hacker who was sitting in between his email. And so whenever he was communicating out, it went to this hacker's inbox. And then the hacker would modify that email and then send it out from his email address. And so anything in and out was going through this, through this hacker or whatever. I mean, and so he had intercepted this and gotten the money. And it was a pretty significant amount. And the guy comes back to me and says, "Hey, you need to pay this." And I'm like, "Dude, nope. You're going to take it up with your insurance." I'm like, "I got an email from your verified email address saying that this is where I needed to pay, and that's what I did, and I've got receipt of me doing that. So you need to take this up with insurance." Now, the story doesn't end there. He ended
By the
up,
way, how many other people of his customers?
yeah. So that was where I was getting to. So this attack was pretty sophisticated. I think they ended up getting over like $300,000 or $400,000 from the guy. His insurance got him back. But ultimately, this was a case of where the hackers had no access to his financial information. They had access. I mean, it's not like they had to break the CRM in order to get the money. They got in through his email. And so, a simple solution for that is if you're using Google Apps, and I know that, by the way, if you're a longtime listener to this podcast, you know that Dan is all about Google Apps, which I love. But if you're a Google subscriber, you can turn on two-factor authentication. There's things that you can do to make sure that you're, going back to your data is only as secure as your dumbest person that you have dealing with it. You need to make sure things like that are turned on, because in this case, this person didn't come in through breaking the bank, right? They didn't come in through some sophisticated way. They just basically found that his email password was probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and said, "Oh, that's called a brute force attack." They figured it out. They set up rules. They got in between all this communication. And the next thing you know, they started redirecting funds.
And now we're moving into episode 227, which launched back on May 22nd. It's titled Quality Pro, Taking Your Company to the Next Level. Tom Jarzynka is the VP of Technical and Training for Massey Services. He joined the show to discuss the importance of accreditation and how it helps pest companies.
Can you just talk through why a business owner should really consider becoming Quality Pro if they're not accredited yet?
Okay, well, your memory is good. Okay, so the 18 segments or checkpoints are still in place. The difference is today we've become a little more modern, and the submissions are electronic, and the resources that are available electronically as well. So we're not shipping in containers full of 3-ring binders to prove your worth there. It's done in a much cleaner step-by-step process there, and those resources are available. So going back to the question is why. In reviewing it for me, I think the thing I want to look at is that when I'm trying to solve a problem or I'm trying to work through issues and I'm doing it by myself, I only have my own experiences to draw from. And I find that when I have a chance to sit with someone and have a conversation about a particular topic, they say things and then I think of things and find solutions that I wouldn't have found on my own just because of the interaction, right? So when you take your business and you're running your business and you're doing your thing and you think you're doing it right, and then all of a sudden you've got this checklist you can look at and you're going through and saying, yeah, we do that well. Ooh, wait a minute. Safety training, Am I really documenting that right? Or here's how we're handling our vehicles, and maybe I could just pause and take a look at that. I think the benefit of being in part of the association is that the resources are there, the support's going to be there to help you become the most professional organization you can with. That's we're feeding the positives there. At the same point in time, we're going to cause you to look at your business and hopefully see where you can take steps that will help you, okay, that you wouldn't have done on your own.
Moving on now to the final episode in the month of May. It dropped on the 29th and features Dan and Donnie discussing the ideal branch size for pest control companies. So I technically picked 2 sections from this episode. They're fairly close together though, but it gives some pros on small branches and it gives pros on big branches. Let's check it out.
When an office is small, it's a lot easier to manage. When it's easy to manage, it's fast. You can grow a lot faster. And the reason is because there's high accountability, there's high visibility. There's things that, that can happen a lot sooner. And it's just a lot, I don't want to say it's less structured because that's not true. But there's a lot less wheels turning to make things happen. And if you're an operator and you're listening to this, you probably already know this from when you started your business. I know that was certainly the case when I started Triangle. I was very much into the weeds. Our branch was super small. It was super nimble. I mean, a customer canceling, like everyone knew about it. And so there were a lot less ways for things to fall through the cracks because it's much more bite-sized than when you're dealing with, an $8 million or $10 million or $12 million branch where there's just multiple technicians and there's just, lots of scale and lots of things to keep up with. And so that's the argument for a smaller office. The other thing is that, I don't know that it's so much the case now, and I hope that some of these marketing folks that are listening aren't going to beat me over the head for saying this, but, there was also the rationale that, yes,
Google Office.
that's where I was going. Yep. That, hey, Google likes it when you're in town and when you're in the center of town, and, there's a bunch of heuristics that went into that. But there was that argument as well, even if, this is the days before you could just rent an office, from Regis or whatever. So there is that. The other thing that I would say is a positive to that is, you can put a lot more into the relationships. Why do a larger branch? Well, some say that's easier to manage, right? It's easier to get information out. You got everyone together. You can have less managers. Obviously there's the cost aspect, right? You're not leasing out multiple buildings. You can kind of like combine everything. You can scale a lot of things. And so, we're doing this here in Raleigh right now, currently on our pest side, and on our lawn side, which is where we have one branch to cover the entire metro market. And I don't know that either is like, this is the best way per se. We're doing it now kind of out of necessity because I've got this nice building and I paid a lot of money for it. Should I say the bank paid a lot of money for it? And, we're going to use it. Right. And that's kind of my thought is me going out and, leasing out a bunch of different places. And I don't know, for me, like, I'm really big on culture, and I love the idea of being able to go down and talk to guys and see what's going on and get a feel for what's happening. And when you got these remote areas, it's really difficult to do that as an owner.
PMPIndustryInsider.com has full episodes for you to check out, and the PMP Industry Insider YouTube channel will let you kind of get a different view of the show, see what the fellas look like. So while you're there or while you're here, depending on how you're listening, give us a like and subscribe. Stay up to date. We're also all over social media. Just search at PMP Industry Insider and you'll find us. I'm Brett, the editor. That's Insiders Rewind recapping May. I'll see you back here in early July. Take care.